and welcome to Friday's Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who, like me and like you, is still waiting on a US soccer decision. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I guess you could say no decision is a decision right now.
Yeah, until there is a decision.
Well, yeah, there's that too.
Good semantic start to the Total Soccer Show. So we mentioned on Thursday's show that we have received many emails and questions about the Jurgen Klinsmann situation. We haven't had time to answer them all. But there are so many that we thought we could do listener questions on the show and answer, maybe 3 or 4 of them at least.
Yeah.
So on today's show, we have got 3 or 4 listener questions, mostly US national team related. And we've got a little preview of the craziest weekend of action possible coming up. And we'll close the show with some Scouting Network.
Sounds good. We've got a listener clarification as well.
Oh, yes, we do.
From Mark Bujarski.
Yes,
thanks for that, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. We'll get to that in a bit.
Up first, as you said, we've got some questions. Let's start with Tom Holt, shall we?
Please do then.
All right, Tom says, while I'm all aboard the Klinsmann must-go wagon, I do question if Michael Bradley also gets given a pass in midfield, where at times his passing is poor and he switches off defensively. He seems to me like Rooney with England. Despite declining skills, he gets on the team sheet automatically.
So I've heard this before. I've heard it elsewhere, and I think it is like I'm going to call it a semi-popular opinion in that a lot of people hold it.
I think I've heard it since before the 2014 World Cup. So I think it's similar to the Jurgen Klinsmann must go bandwagon, whatever you want to call it, hype train. That basically I think it stretches a long way back. I think people have very strong opinions about Michael Bradley, as they do about other players on this team, like Josie Altidore. But yes, I think there's a long history of people not being in favor of Michael Bradley always getting to start.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure why.
Why? So, I mean, I can't think. Let's just take Tom's question as the example, right? What does he say? At times his passing is poor and he switches off defensively. So, there is evidence, right? You could find footage of a Michael Bradley misplaced pass. You could find footage of Michael Bradley, let's say, failing to fully tackle Gio Dos Santos for Mexico's first goal. There is evidence for this.
Yeah, there's the failure to pass to Bobby Wood, who was wide open, the layoff. That
we looked into that, right? When Wood was spinning in a circle.
Yep, so. There's that. But I think, I watched a compilation of all of Michael Bradley's work in that Mexico game, and there are definitely times when he doesn't seem to be putting in as hard of a tackle as he could be. And we've talked in the past about there are moments where he just doesn't close somebody down. I can't remember if it was the Cuba game or the New Zealand game, but he kind of never changes his pace in those games.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a consistent jog back, a consistent jog forward. It's never a breakneck pace trying to break up play or prevent a counterattack, as we've seen Jermaine Jones do countless times.
I would say it's more about his dissatisfaction with the current administration. Let's say. I don't think he loves some of the stuff that Klinsmann is asking him to do. There's even a famous, I can't remember who this was. It was Ivers Galasep, when they were either in Costa Rica or before the Mexico game, asked Jurgen Klinsmann, what is Bradley's best position? And asked Bradley, what is Bradley's best position? And got 2 different answers.
And I do think that points to what I was talking about if you go back and look at kind of how long people have been critical of Michael Bradley, that does come at a time when he was playing number 6, then he was a number 10, then he was a number 8, then he was a hybrid 6 and 8, then he was a number 10 that was also a number 6 with responsibilities. Now he seems back to a number 6. It does seem like that's where he's playing. But it has been kind of all over the place, and I think some of those positions and responsibilities suit him better than others.
I think so too. And then I also think, as well as him being asked to play multiple positions, he is the US's go-to guy, right? Wherever he plays, he's the go-to guy. He's wearing the armband, right? I think he gets so much of the ball that he's going to misplace passes. He also makes things happen. We don't talk about the great balls that he does play. We don't talk about maybe the tackles that he does make. But if there's a misplaced pass or a missed tackle that leads to an opposition goal, we talk about that. So I feel like he's just so central to what the US does that his mistakes get highlighted and people get frustrated with it. And I don't think that is a reason to just drop him and get rid of him. It's more just we should put him in a position to succeed more often.
Well, but I'm curious though, but now you've said, and I think maybe some listeners would be curious, so that's why I'm going down this line of questioning. But you've now said that maybe he has dissatisfaction with Jurgen Klinsmann, maybe that's why he's not as sharp as he could be, but then also he gets the ball a lot and he has a lot of responsibility. I think so. Aren't those 2 different things then?
No, because if you think of the US-Mexico game and the US-Costa Rica game, he's asked to cover too much ground, right? Essentially, and he's trying to do it, but he's being asked to cover too much ground.
Yeah.
So therefore, you put him in a bad situation, and it makes him look bad. And even though he's trying his best, he maybe is our best passer in midfield, but he's going to hit some bad passes, and he's going to sort of not be able to close people down quickly enough if the setup is not sort of suited to him or to anyone, in fact. But he's going to try his best to try and make it work anyway.
I agree with you.
I'm very pro Michael Bradley, in case anyone hasn't picked up on that.
I think we did. I agree with you about the most recent games, but I do think in those friendlies, and that's maybe what I'm holding on to, I think if you look at those friendlies and then you look at the way he plays for Columbus, both in the regular season and Toronto? Toronto in the playoffs and the regular season, I think that there is a clear difference. And I talked about this before. You can see, even just in the playoffs, and yes, it's playoff soccer, but when they score, it clearly means so much to him. He's so up for those games and is so emotionally ready. And you compare that to, maybe I'll close this guy down. I'm not really going to put in that much effort.
But you're comparing that to the Cuba friendly and the New Zealand friendly. I think if he'd scored in the Mexico game or the Costa Rica game, you would have seen him sort of celebrating his heart out. You even saw the look of... Look how distraught he was. I think when the third goal went in, he's the one that ends up running into the net, and he's just got this look of like, oh.
Yeah, no, but you misunderstand what I'm saying. What I'm saying though is that like if you're supposed to be the captain and the leader and like the vocal organizer of this team, if there are games when you visibly, in my opinion, are just sort of like, nah, I don't feel up for it in this game, then I feel like that's where I can understand people being really frustrated.
But enough to get rid of him, because the thing I keep hearing is that like he doesn't deserve to be in the team. No, I cannot get on board with that because I think he's our best midfielder.
I agree with that, and that's where I would definitely not go that far. And I do think he is a leader for this team. I think a lot of people look to him both within the team and outside of the team. I think people kind of respect him, listen to him, follow what he says.
And I bet they would thank him for the tactical switch 26 minutes into the Mexico game, which he essentially made happen.
I think so, and I think that's where you see his value is that he does, I think, come across as one of the smarter players in that team, one of the players who can pick up on stuff and try to figure things out, is capable of unlocking defenses. I do think that I've also seen some people be, again, I promise I'm not just using some people as a way to not have to say me, because I am genuinely a fan of Michael Bradley, and generally I enjoy his style of play, those two friendlies aside. But I did see some people commenting on the fact that it didn't seem like he was particularly motivated to get the ball and drive forward at Mexico and against Costa Rica, that it was sort of like he was willing to pass the ball in the back and move it slowly, move it side to side.
I think there's just no way through.
That would be my point. It's like even when there's a pass on, you have to compare that to, is that pass the right pass? Because I would say the times that he did try to force a pass in, it leads to Jermaine Jones under pressure passing it back to John Brooks turning it over, and there being a goal coming out of that.
I think I know what's going on here. I think he's such a central, focal part of the US national team that maybe people's frustrations with the US national team as a whole, if you're not going to focus on Jurgen Klinsmann, which I think is somewhat what we do because we're so obsessed with like tactics and instructions and styles, I think if you're just going to focus on poor performances, then you focus on Michael Bradley. So your frustrations with the team get channeled into your frustrations with the captain, talisman, central midfielder, with, bold, shiny head in midfield is very obvious, easy to spot.
But I think it's also a matter of we've talked about this before, soccer is a weird sport in that 2 people, 5 people, 10 people can watch the same game and have 2, 5, 10 different opinions. Yeah. And I think if you love Michael Bradley and you watch the game and we have a divider between us and I hate Michael Bradley, he could have the best game you've ever seen him play. That divider could come down and I could be like, oh, he was awful. What are you talking about? Because if you think he's not playing well, if you're frustrated by his performance, that pass that he didn't make or that time he turned the ball over or that time he played it out of bounds is going to stand out, whereas the times that he turned and played a pass through 2 people and found somebody running through is going to stand out. We've had that situation with Bobby Wood ourselves, where I didn't rate Bobby Wood that much in the beginning. You were a big fan of his, and he would like drive down the line and then play across it. And you'd be like, did you see that? Like he beat that one defender. I'd be like, come on, man, you're reaching. Like he made one run. That's not that good. And you were willing to kind of forgive other aspects of his game because you saw positive growth in there.
I enjoyed the way he received the ball and turned in one touch. I saw a future in that.
Right. And so I think that also plays into it, though, that if you start to not like Michael Bradley, if you start to think, I don't think he should be in this team, and that's kind of where you are when the kickoff happens, when things start to go south, when he misplaces the pass, it's going to be like, see right there. You can't misplace that pass if you're the captain. If you're the number 10, if you're the number 6, whatever it may be, you've got to be the one who's showing people how to pass, and then it kind of devolves from there.
I'm just going to write down by TSS divider.
It would be an interesting thing to watch the game separately. Oh, I guess we've done that before. We did that for all of the 2014 World Cup, where we were in 2 different locations.
All right, next up, Taylor. We have a question from Jose Andre Soto. Jose wants to know, do you think that our US players intentionally threw the game against Costa Rica in order to put pressure on Gulati to fire Klinsmann? Before you scream out, no, never, this is America, Taylor Rockwell, keep in mind that what we saw was pretty unbelievable.
Now, I'm not going to say no, never. What I'm going to say is we did kind of already answer this question yesterday, but actually I think we either didn't see this or this came in after we'd answered that question.
Well, I think several people suggested it, and Jose was the most strongly worded.
Yeah, and Jose had some more information, so we figured we'd revisit it one more time and hear the opposite side of the equation.
Okay, so Jose says, could it be that we saw a team that has no tactical identity, whose players seemed physically outplayed and emotionally broken, who had no game plan of their own when things broke down from the sideline? Sure. But could it be just as possible that the team realised that the only way to effect change in the future and get rid of Jurgen Klinsmann would be to intentionally be completely outplayed, Brooks most of all, apparently, outscored by an unforgiving margin, and clearly outcoached, making it evident to even the most average of fans that Klinsmann had to go? Mm-hmm. Is it possible?
It's sure. I guess it's possible. But I don't necessarily think it's possible.
I saw no evidence for that.
Agreed.
I saw players genuinely disappointed when Costa Rican goals went in. We talked about Michael Bradley earlier, the distraught look on his face. None of the players were like winking at each other, being like, yeah, we got him. We got him.
No, and it's also like these are athletes who have a lot at stake.
Yep.
They want to continue to play for the U.S. national team.
Yep.
They want to continue to play for their clubs. They want their reputation and their kind of value to increase.
Yep.
John Brooks is not going to have... John Brooks, an up-and-coming center back who people have linked with, us included, have linked with bigger clubs and bigger moves.
Arsenal, we talked about,
is not going to intentionally make ridiculous mistakes and potentially just ruin his career as a result.
Exactly. There is more at stake, right? And even if you get a reputation, if you attempt a mutiny and you do that, if you get a reputation for that, there'd be no coach in the world would be too happy to work with you again. Right? Because I understand, right? Our frustration with Klinsmann has sort of grown over the years, and maybe the players have as well. But it's not as if he's doing horrible things to them, right? He's not injecting them with sort of illegal cocktail of drugs or something that's absolutely like horrific where you need to mutiny.
Yeah.
It's just he has bad tactics. Right, and so it's not enough to warrant any sort of revolution.
I actually disagree. I don't think it's just that he has bad tactics. I think if you have bad tactics, that's one thing. But I think it's you have bad to no tactics, and I think that it's gotten to the point where the quote that we were sent from the Philip Lahm autobiography, I think, continues to ring out, which is that basically within 8 weeks, we could kind of see through Jurgen Klinsmann. We knew what he was about, and we knew it wasn't going to work, and the rest of the season was damage limitation.
Yeah. And he said that all the focus was on fitness, and we basically had to decide tactics for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think you can have a bad tactical coach, but you can still like him and still work around that. I don't think it's ideal, obviously. But when you have a coach who doesn't seem to have a tactical game plan, and it seems like at this point, people are sort of like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, we don't really respect... It just seems like he doesn't have the players' respect anymore.
You know, and I agree with that, but I'm saying the case for actual mutiny, where you sabotage your game, he would need to be doing something illegal to them behind the scenes where it was worth doing that, right? Because the damage to your reputation is so great.
Because even when you hear about players colluding to have a specific result... It in the past has...
Like in a match fixing kind of way?
No, I would say away from match fixing, because that's a separate thing entirely.
I was gonna say.
But in terms of stuff that's, I guess, sort of... I mean, it is legal within the rules of the game, but it's not... It's definitely frowned upon. Is the games where two teams need a draw before they had the final games of the World Cup group stage were all played at the same time. When two teams knew they needed a draw, so it was just well, we're just going to pass around the back for an hour and a half and no one's going to do anything. That is more of what you would see. But the idea
if John Brooks had played in that game, it would have been a goal.
Yeah, well, maybe. But that to me is what it is, more so than the idea of 11 players coming together to be we're intentionally going to have a really awful game, and then that's going to get him fired, because you also don't know if it's going to get him fired.
I would say also, I don't know how much soccer Jose has played, or any of the people who are suggesting that they would deliberately throw the game. It is impossible to play a game of soccer and deliberately play badly, I would say. Because if you're any sort of competitive person, you are not going to deliberately lose a tackle. You're not going to sort of let someone get away from you.
You might be able to at the start, but I agree with you that if you're a competitive person, you're going to hate it. You're going to hate it real fast. And it's also, it's just kind of obvious, I would say as well, that if I were not going in for a tackle against you, it would be very apparent very quickly, because people would be like, oh, he clearly pulled out of that tackle.
And we have seen, I can't think of a specific example, but we have seen examples of match fixing where there's rumours of match fixing. You look at the footage and you see a goalkeeper deliberately let a ball in.
Yeah.
It's really unconvincing. It's diving over the top of the ball in a way that makes no sense for anyone with any spatial awareness.
Right. And I think about there have been the situations with point shaving in basketball. I forget, there was the biggest scandal, I think it was Boston College, was the guy said like, oh, that was the easiest money I've ever made because we just lost that game. And there is that, like, you can do that, but that's basketball when you might just be facing a clearly superior opponent.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in a game that's like should have been more evenly contested between the USA and Costa Rica, not saying the USA should have won, but definitely like it's not as though Costa Rica are
4-0 better.
like World Cup champions that are coming in and the United States is going to get the doors blown off of them.
Yeah.
But it still is a game where like it would have taken, I feel like, a very intentional like diving over the ball sort of situation for it to be like, ooh, that's not what should have happened. Something is fishy there.
Can we look at this from another angle then? Like, assuming, and I'm 100% confident the players did not throw the game. Not least because, we talk about this off air, they still want to go to the World Cup. If I'm a player and I don't like Jurgen Klinsmann, I would rather go to the World Cup with him as coach than not go to the World Cup.
I said it a second ago, like, but it's also, again, like, number one, yeah, you still want to go to the World Cup, but number two, you don't know if he's going to get fired. Again, it's not like Sunil Gulati has said he's got to win this game or he's out. And they're like, well, maybe we don't win this game and then we get a new coach. It's sort of like, even if you all play horribly and you get embarrassed and destroyed, there's a decent chance. I mean, he hasn't been fired yet.
Yep.
We don't know if he will be. There's a decent chance that if you completely throw that game, you have ruined your chances of ever playing for the U.S. national team under Jurgen Klinsmann if he stays there as coach.
And I think, honestly, if that's what happened, they'd have ruined their chances of ever playing for the US again under anyone.
It's a decent possibility.
It's actual mutiny.
So
but let's look at it from a different angle, right? They didn't throw the game. I'm 100% on that. If they did want to get Klinsmann fired, what could the players do behind the scenes? Even now, right? Say there is a thing where Sunil Gulati and the rest of US soccer are considering Klinsmann's position. If you're a player, do you send Gulati an email and say, hey, I'd like to meet and talk about and let you know why he's not the guy?
I think we've already seen it. Because remember the Brian Strauss article that came out, and he definitely had sources in the U.S. camp talking about how they weren't happy with training, they weren't happy with Klinsmann's methods. I think that's how you go about doing it. We saw that with Chelsea last season.
Strauss.
You talk to journalists who you respect, who you know will respect your confidentiality and not disclose you as a source. But I mean, look at Chelsea last season with the three rats or whatever Jose Mourinho called them. I mean, that's how you do it: is you publicly, but discreetly, without naming your name, kind of make it clear that the locker room doesn't like him, that he's not respected. Because I think even if you're Sunil Gulati, you can know that people aren't happy, you can know that fans aren't happy, you can know that the players don't look as motivated as they could, but you aren't in the locker room, you don't know that stuff for sure. But once you start hearing, like, no, he has lost the locker room, people don't respect him, people aren't listening, it makes you have to really deal with that situation.
And that has been the narrative post Costa Rica, right? You've got to look at this as kind of like a PR game that everyone's playing. We don't normally talk about the US coach Klinsmann losing the locker room, meaning you no longer have the trust and respect of the players. That is a thing that's being written about, being printed, and being talked about right now. And I think there may be some off-the-record stuff happening there. Some background interviews. You know what I'm saying?
I think there may be, but I think, like talking about that Brian Strauss article for a second, that was a decent while ago. And I do think that the United States
the
players...
game was in March 2013. That's how long ago it was.
I do think the U.S. players on the whole have kind of done themselves more of a service than a disservice.
Why
because
so?
I think that they've been frustrated for much longer than we've probably known. And I think, like Michael Bradley, for example, I mean, that interview after Mexico where it was like he was really trying not to say anything that would get him in trouble, that would get the team in trouble.
When we saw it live, you kept saying, he keeps saying, he keeps like stammering.
And it was just really weird because
he's thinking, right? He's buying himself time to say. I think the phrase he settled on was, we need clear ideas, which I think is the best way of saying we weren't given any instructions.
Yeah, but I mean, you've heard him speak in the past. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to give a quote, a sound clip. So to spend half to 70% of an interview going, we need clear ideas.
The brilliant, I don't know if it's irony, I guess, of that clip is as he's halfway through saying that sentence about clear ideas,
Osorio walks by,
and Michael Bradley gives him like a hello nod.
If anything, if you wanted to go into the conspiracy,
the subtext was like this guy.
If you wanted to go into the conspiracy of the U.S. players throwing games, that would be like the hilarious joke of like, no, we just weren't up for it, and then like the opposition coach comes in and hugs you as you're doing an interview about like why you might have lost this game. It's like, wait a minute, but no, I think that you could have seen more, and I think these players have been frustrated. But I really do believe are aware that there was no way Klinsmann was going anywhere. like unless things got really, really, really bad. And it does sound like now we've heard some stories coming out that maybe like starting last year that U.S. Soccer did start looking into other coaches who might be available.
Arena and Vermees is the story, right? That they looked at both of those guys.
Right, and that was after like the CONCACAF Cup, which did not go well, and then after some losses and some friendlies.
I'm
and
imagining Guatemala away.
And then that would be the other World Cup qualifier. So I think you have started to see maybe U.S. Soccer be aware of the situation, but I think that's how it starts, is players making it known that they are not happy.
We haven't talked about this on the show. You also saw Sunil Gulati be asked about like what happens after 2018, and he essentially said like coaches don't go for 3 cycles. So there was the thing of, I guess the thing is like we kind of had enough. We know this can't go on beyond 2018, but we're already in the middle of qualifying for the 2018 World Cup, and we're not going to change. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, you don't change horses mid-hex.
Yes, yeah, I think he said that exactly, actually. That's a verbatim quote. And one other thing I would say in terms of how you can go about changing things if you are a player is I think it's just like, I don't know, maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, but do your best to navigate what I'm about to ramble down. But like I think of it as, say you're working a job that you really, really, really like, and your boss...
Doing it right now?
Yeah, there you go. Or, well, you don't have a boss in this situation, aside from yourself. But if you have a boss and that boss sees you every day and you're always chipper and excited to be there and happy, I won't say perky, we've banned that word in my family because my dad said it way too often, but you're always in a good mood at work. And then your boss hires somebody to work, between you two, you have a new boss, and you hate that guy. So then whenever that your old boss sees you, now all of a sudden you're in a bad mood all the time. You're still there, you're still doing your work, but it's just clear that you're not happy. That's going to become apparent, and it will affect the mood of the office, right? Yep. And I think that's the same thing here, that when things are going well, when you're drawing and winning away at the Azteca and getting results and everybody, the team picture in the locker room and there's a sense of camaraderie, you can feel that. And on the flip side, when you're coming back from Cuba and everyone just looks angry and furious to be there and isn't talking and seems downcast, it's sort of like, uh-oh, like this is different. And yes, they're still playing and they're still accepting the call-ups, but things have definitely changed.
All right. So one more question, which I believe relates to the US national team. It does. It's from Matt Castle. Matt actually has 2 questions, but we like them both, so we're going to ask them both. Can I ask the first one and you ask the second one?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay. So Matt's first question is, with all you smart media folks talking tactical previews before games, I think you must be including us in that. Is there ever a worry about broadcasting our team's weaknesses or potential plans? I know there are professionals at each club and national team who are researching this stuff full time, so maybe it doesn't matter, but it seems like we could be helping other teams maybe. If I'm working at a club or national team, I would definitely immerse myself into the opposition's journalistic following to learn things to use against them. So what do you say to this, Taylor? Is there information in the Total Soccer Show that opposition coaches could use against the United States?
I mean, obviously I'm going to say yes because I want everyone to continue to subscribe and listen. I think we definitely, because we watch...
If we get a lot of subscriptions from foreign countries that the US is about to play, we should start worrying?
Yeah, I think so. Well, not worry.
Honduras and Panama.
Be happy. Maybe we can sell that information to Jurgen. But I would honestly say that, yeah, there's probably some stuff in there because we watch, the U.S. national team or specific teams so often become so familiar with certain players that we probably do pick up on little things here and there. But I don't know if that's as valuable to coaches as maybe Matt and we would like to think it is, because I think coaches tend to not listen to the media. I think most coaches think the media don't necessarily know what they're talking about. I think there's a lot of armchair experts out there who have never been in charge, who don't necessarily know, and so they're not going to give them as much credit as they would their own coaching staff or other coaching staffs.
I think of it this way. There are media outlets, like maybe us, maybe Matt Doyle at MLS Soccer, maybe Will Parchman, 91st minute, at Top Draw Soccer, that does have information, but we're not the mainstream media. Right. And the mainstream media is the only thing that you would be aware of if you're from another country. And the mainstream media is kind of discredited, right? Like I feel like most coaches and most players, like look at Leo Messi in the Argentina team refusing to speak to the Argentinian media now. I think that's the best example of players and staff deciding we don't trust the media.
I mean, so there's a trust level for sure, but there's also like, even I would say Gary Neville is maybe a decent example who is a player who does have coaching badges, has some experience coaching, is given a gig and it goes horribly. And he's given a gig, I think, for who he is and everything, but a decent part of it is Monday Night Football, and he's this amazing expert who can break down tactics and explain how things should have gone. And then you see him in a coaching position. And I think a lot of coaches were secretly pretty happy that he failed, because it's an example of like, there's a whole different element to it that you have to be aware of when you're doing this job.
And there's also, how would they even find us?
iTunes.
iTunes, yeah, but how many podcasts are there on iTunes?
TotalSoccerShow.com.
They'd have to listen to all the podcasts. All that time you could spend watching footage.
Are you just saying we need to do better with our branding and marketing? I feel like that's what you're getting at.
Or worse, if we want the US to succeed.
Yeah. But I mean, even then, yes, I think you're right that like mainstream media is discredited. But it's also like there's not some aggregator out there that's like, you know what? Alexi Lalas got 92% of his here's what they need to do is correct. So like, like his prognostications were correct. And therefore, you should always listen to what he says about how to beat Mexico or how to beat the USA. So there's no real like standard out there. So I think, again, you probably shouldn't be listening if you're a coach to like the overall game plan advice. Yeah. But I do think you can probably get like individualized pieces here and there that you probably could use.
Well, here's the thing as well. Going back to your Gary Neville point, like Gary Neville is very often, when you watch his stuff on Monday Night Football, he's wise after the fact, right? Yep. He analyzes things after they happen.
Captain hindsight.
And I would say the majority of what we do is afterwards, right? It's we're co-captain hindsight, because reviewing the footage is more fun because everyone knows what you're talking about. You can review specific goals, and that's no good to you once the game's already happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true that we can pick up on stuff like why this play in particular failed. There's no way that at the time I would have been like, oh, this pass 3 minutes ago leads to this goal. Like, you can't do that live. Obviously, you're always going to do that on replay.
And the coaches are busy with the game that's happening.
Yeah, but I do think that part of what was so maddening, and I think what made us so frustrated in these two games, and why we've kind of lost faith in Jurgen Klinsmann after these two games specifically, is that there was stuff that we identified that was so clearly obvious that he just didn't utilize at all and did his own thing. And I think that is another point of like, it was really obvious because we watched a few games, but I think that would have been obvious to most people. Like, exploit the space in behind, don't let them press you, don't do this, and he kind of
force you to the wings.
Fell right into that trap, yeah.
Maybe Klinsmann should have listened to some Costa Rican podcast.
Yeah, probably. Probably needs to brush up on his Spanish then, but yeah.
All right, second question from Matt Castle was, it's about tactics. He says, obviously formation matters, but how much? If the US is, say, 100% comfortable playing a 4-4-2 and then 85% comfortable playing a 4-2-3-1, I agree with these percentages, I think, and 45% comfortable playing a 3-4-3, that feels about right, would the opposition's expected plan have to be so tough for a 4-4-2 to deal with to cause us to move away from what we're good at? What's the threshold here?
I don't know. What would you say is the threshold? Because that's a difficult word for me to go off of.
I think it depends who you are, right? I think the threshold, if you're Germany or Brazil, is you pick the thing you're best at and you do it and you challenge other teams to deal with it. Like Italy, like one of the best teams under Conte, always played that back three because they knew that's what we're best at, that's what we're going to do. I think that's when you're a top-level team. You can set the challenge to everybody else. This is what we do your worst, we're going to take you.
Right.
When you're the US and you're in, at best, like that second tier of national teams, I think it's on you to then like tinker for each game, change things up, try and deal with Neymar the best you can, try and deal with Thomas Muller the best you can. You can't just be like, this is what we do, come deal with it. And because Germany will be like, all right, well, we'll do what we do. And, we'll see you after 90 minutes.
I think I agree with that for the most part. The weird outlier, and it's kind of, I feel like it's going to be a consistent thing now, is Leicester City. And I think the difference there is that they're playing a 4-4-2. They did that no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is like, imagine Germany playing a 4-4-2 and people being like, oh, that's an outdated formation, so we don't need to worry about them anymore. Like, we'll do whatever we want. I think that's kind of what happened, is that Leicester the outlier because people kept not taking them seriously, so they could just do what they wanted because people, I felt like, weren't tactically preparing for that 4-4-2.
But isn't it also that Leicester got that down so well? It wasn't just like a formless random 4-4-2 like maybe a Sunday team would play when they all just meet up for the first time. Yeah. It was this very organised 4-4-2 where all the space was compressed, and when they all knew, they had instructions, right, that every time we're going to hit it long for Vardy to chase, we're going to get that ball into the box early for Vardy. So it was I think the problem here is that thinking of 4-4-2 as something simple and basic was actually more complicated than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think even like if you look at that U.S. game against Costa Rica, like they're definitely lined up in a 4-4-2. You can see the 4-4-2 at times in that game, but you can also see like a weird like 4-1-3-2, and you can see all these different kind of shapes.
You see the squeeze to the middle, right? Yeah,
right. And so yes, it can be a 4-4-2, but it can also be a lot of other stuff at play in there. So it's not necessarily just this static two midfielders. Now,
it's about the instructions you get within that, right?
That said, at times it was definitely just those two central midfielders in there, which is, again, is part of the problem, is that I think it wasn't...
That's our complaint, right?
Yeah, it wasn't an adjustment to what Costa Rica were obviously going to be doing, and it wasn't setting yourself up to win. It was setting yourself up to do the thing that you think is a good idea and not really paying respect to your strong opponent who are very comfortable doing what they do.
And I guess, so I was talking earlier about like being a top-level team. I think also if you come up against a tactically sophisticated team like Costa Rica, then it's on you to sort of not be unsophisticated.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Or think that like, well, we'll just bring 2 guys inside and that'll be fine. Like it speaks to a lack of like overall tactical preparation against a team who maybe looks like simple on paper. I don't know what it was that made Jurgen Klinsmann think like, 4 midfielders will be fine. Clearly wasn't the case. And then it was a lack of adjustment thereafter that kind of continued to lead to the problem. So I think my answer would be that you do maybe start to move away from whatever formation you are most comfortable with when you're coming up against an opponent that is really comfortable in what they're doing or prevents obvious threats to what you are trying to do.
I sign off on
Okay.
that. All right. We maybe think that the Costa Rica game may be Jurgen Klinsmann's come to Jesus moment. We had a discussion on the last show about exactly what that means. We have the answer for sort of where it came from and what it means from this Namat Bajarski. We're going to tell you that answer on the other side of this ad break. So we promised Taylor before the break that we would talk about the come to Jesus moments. Can you give listeners the context for why we're even talking about this to begin with?
I think it was discussing how this could be like Sunil Gulati could call in Jurgen Klinsmann. It could be his come to Jesus moment where he's got to change and adapt the way he does things. Otherwise, he could be on his way out. That was what this conversation could be. Because we were thinking at the time that there had been a conversation yesterday between Klinsmann and Gulati.
Right.
That obviously has not been the case. But we were saying that maybe that would be his come to Jesus moment. And
I
you said, I don't really know what that's about.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
I thought afterwards, maybe this is a very American thing. This is the reason I've never heard this phrase in the UK. Luckily, we got an email from Mark Bajarski to explain what come to Jesus means. Would you like me to read it? I've got it here. Okay.
Go ahead.
Mark says, I got a good laugh out of the discussion about this idiom and thought, as your friendly everyday pastor, I'd clarify. Thank you, Mark.
Pastor, by the way.
Well,
not friendly everyday pasta for those who might have had trouble with that accent.
You also getting on me the other day for saying pasta instead of pasta, right?
What? Well, I think you just said pasta and pastor is a very similar word. Anyway.
Well, Mark spells it Pastor.
Yeah, there we go.
Mark says, from what I can tell, the expression, come to Jesus, came from the American frontier. Revival preachers around the time of the First Great Awakening used to have these massive multi-day preaching sessions on the roughest part of the frontiers, and the term was used for when a person was saved/accepted Christ. It became a readily used expression for a difficult conversation as it had become associated with one coming face to face with their own sin and therefore evolved to have a negative connotation.
Well, there we are.
It makes it deeper because it's as if Klinsmann's sin is to be not preparing tactically for games.
I was going to say,
It makes it sound harsh.
I think it's in the Bible somewhere. Thou shalt not play a 4-4-2 against an established and well-drilled 3-4-1-2. 3-4-2-1, excuse me.
It may be in the future. So do we think, I want to talk about this genuinely, do we think there could be a come to Jesus moment for Jurgen Klinsmann? And thank you, Mark, for clearing this up. Is there a chance that he's like, all right, I accept this. I realised I should have been making better plans, giving players better instructions. I am going to change my ways. And if so, what does that even look like? Do we pay Yogi Low a lot of money?
I mean, the cynic in me says, like, yeah, that's probably what will happen. But my answer is probably not a whole lot will happen. Like, I'm sure he'll have a meeting with Sunil Gulati at some point, and I'm sure that conversation will be not fun for him, and it will be, why are you doing this? What's this?
Principal's office, we talked about it.
But I also, if he's not fired, then that conversation is going to begin with, look, we're not going to let you go. I just want to establish that now. But I do want to know what your plans are to fix this. And at that point, it becomes, obviously, if you think you're being fired, you're going to scramble a little bit more and work a little bit harder than, I'm not fired? Whew, okay, good. I'm definitely going to change some stuff. I'm going to work. I'm definitely going to get here on time next week. Don't worry. Don't worry.
What if he was serious, though? Like, what if, for example, he would bring in a tactical advisor, as he kind of did for the World Cup, right? Remember Bertie Vogts came on, and suddenly we're playing diamond in midfield? That's definitely someone came in with a tactic and said, hey, I'm going to help you with this.
Yeah, I think it would have to be that, but genuinely. Because that, to me, felt like Bertie Vogts was like just kind of like a hired contractor who came in and was like, play a diamond.
Yeah, he definitely got a 10.99.
Money, please, and then that was it. So I think it would have to be somebody.
I'm going to suggest a shape in the shape of what I want you to pay me in. That's what Bertie wrote.
There we go. So I think it would have to be somebody that he actually would listen to and could actually give him different instructions than maybe he's thought about. It would probably have to be somebody who would be willing to take like that assistant technical advisor job.
So not Bruce Arena, because Bruce Arena wants to be
No.
the
So, I
bus.
mean, if we're looking domestically, like from a name from MLS, then I think it's a guy who's doesn't have a job at the moment, and that's probably Ziggy Schmidt. We've heard a lot about that from Twitter, about why we didn't mention him. And I think we didn't mention him because I don't think he would be in line to get the U.S. national team job, rightly or wrongly.
Well, his stock is kind of lower than it has been historically because he exited on a low, right? He essentially got let go. And then Seattle got a lot better after he got let go.
But I think it's also, what I'm saying is, like, I'm not even talking about his situation right now. I'm just saying that he's not a name that I think U.S. soccer would consider like sexy enough. This is not my opinion. I'm just telling you, like, he hasn't been
to be head coach. You mean
he hasn't been in those estimations? He hasn't been in those conversations.
Right.
I mean, we've heard Peter Vermees and we've heard Bruce Arena is what I'm saying.
But what about to be the advisor as opposed to be the replacement head
that
coach?
I think would. I think it would be a good job for him. I mean, the United States could probably use some shoring up on defense. You've done the research, and he's a more defense-minded coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Seattle fans sort of semi-complained about, is that he just had a very naturally conservative inclination, right? So he would set up a solid defense and then kind of hope that Obafemi Martins and Clint Dempsey would take care of the rest of it. I kind of think that might provide some balance to the force on the US national team. When you look at sort of John Brooks stepping and Omar Gonzalez sitting deep and that like crazy attempt at an offside trap, maybe Ziggy Schmidt would come in and be like, I'm essentially thinking defensive coordinator in an NFL kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, is
that crazy?
No, it's not, but the thing is, and I'm sorry for being Debbie Downer here, but the reality is, if that were to happen, that's a terrible idea.
Why?
Because when has it ever been... Okay, we'll stick with the defensive coordinator situation, right? Can you imagine a situation when you're a head coach, you've gotten the head coaching job, the owner says, congratulations, or general manager says, congratulations.
Am I in the NFL here?
You're the coach. You're the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. I'm sorry. But, and I'm a Cleveland fan, I can say that. But...
like Liz Lemon, apparently I'm a model in Cleveland.
There we go. So you're the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Congratulations. Here's your defensive coordinator. And you're like, wait, no, I had my guy that I was going to hire. This is the guy who does the system I want, who I trust. He's my defensive coordinator. And somebody says, no, this will be your defensive coordinator now. It's a guy you've never met, or you've met and maybe you don't know that well.
Wait, is Ziggy Schmidt this coach in this situation?
I mean, that's what that would be. That would be Sunu Galati saying, bring somebody in, otherwise you're in trouble.
Oh, I was kind of hoping that Klinsmann, in his come to Jesus moment, would choose Ziggy Schmidt.
I see. So you're basically hoping...
Not that he'd be imposed from above.
I see. So you're hoping that Klinsmann would change his entire way of thinking and be like,
Isn't that what come to Jesus means?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so.
Okay,
explained. I see what you're getting at now. So it would be in the ideal situation of him being a completely different person, essentially. Gotcha. Yeah. So then that's what that would be. Yeah, it would be him completely realizing that his tactics have been wrong. Maybe he appoints Jermaine Jones as his tactical advisor. Who knows?
I mean, I think Jermaine Jones appointed himself during the Mexico game.
I think so.
All right, Taylor. There's a big weekend coming.
It sure is.
It's
a big day coming.
It's a big day. It's all on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
At least the games that we've highlighted. This Saturday, if you set your alarm for 7:30 a.m., maybe 7:25 Eastern, if you want to make some coffee. If you're on the West Coast, set the DVR. It is Manchester United versus Arsenal on MVC Sports. I'm getting up. I'm watching this.
Oh, yeah?
You're a Man United fan. Are you going to go for this?
Yeah, because my prediction is that Man United wins, or we have our first Jose Mourinho crazy moment of the season.
Is that right?
Yeah, because he already started, and I know some of the quotes have been taken out of context, but there have already been some veiled shots about, like, you all respect Arsene Wenger, you don't respect me. He hasn't won a title in 18 years. It's 13 years. I haven't won but I won a title 18 months ago. Like, there's already that sort of shots being fired.
These are Mourinho's quotes in the build
from
to the
the
game.
press conference today, I believe.
Ooh.
Yeah, and what I guess what he was trying to say, I don't think he was necessarily trying to take a shot at Wenger. He was just trying to say, I feel like you all don't respect me. But that's how it's going to be billed.
But he added 5 years onto the period.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if they do lose, then it's going to be he's going to know that's the narrative, and so he's going to have to like have this crazy outburst about the medical staff or how the referees are cheats or whatever. And he's already had his run-ins this season, but I could see this being either a United win or a blow-up from Mourinho.
On the pitch, the news is, as you told me on yesterday's show, Hector Bellerin, injured. It looks like Carl Jenkinson, who is not a regular, is going to be in there instead.
Yep. Arsenal fans are not thrilled.
Arsenal fans are not. I think there was a headline that they're terrified that he'll be playing against Manchester United. I think Callum Chambers has been sent out on loan, so he's not an option. I can see maybe Paulie Pogba exploiting that bit of space.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Paul Pogba, it could be Anthony Martial. You know who it won't be?
Wayne Rooney?
Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Oh, Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Suspended. He will not be there for this game. Yeah,
wait, why is he suspended?
Yellow card accumulation. So no Zlatan and no Hector Bellerin.
Oh, that's interesting. All right,
it'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
So all these games that we're going to talk about, we're going to sort of let the weekend play out, and then the most interesting things from each game we'll pick up on Monday's show. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Rather than committing to every single game.
Uh-huh.
Another game I'll be watching, I don't know about you, is Dortmund versus Bayern. This game is on Fox, Big Fox, main Fox, at 12:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday.
It is, yeah, and it's exciting. I mean, number one, just because anytime a big game gets on Fox, that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
But it's also an exciting game because it's Bayern Munich, who are Bayern Munich, and then it's Dortmund, who are, fifth in the table?
Yeah, it's kind of not what I'm used to with Bayern Dortmund games. Is normally, okay, Bayern are just starting to pull away at the top of the table. They're maybe 2 points clear of Dortmund. And this is the game where Dortmund can pull it back. And then Bayern win 5-1, which is what happened last year. We watched that round.
I think you're talking specifically about last season, yeah.
This time, Bayern are top, unbeaten, I believe. I looked into it. Dortmund are fifth. Dortmund are fifth with 18 points. They're already 6 points behind Bayern.
Yep.
In that way, it's a bigger game for Thomas Tuchel's team just to stay within touching distance, right?
Yes, I mean, from that perspective. But I would also say that, last season, it was very obvious that Bayern Munich were running away with the title.
Yeah.
And I think it was more at that point, if there's one team that can even barely keep touching distance, it's going to be Dortmund.
Yeah.
And this season, I mean, you've already pointed it out, Bayern Munich are first, Dortmund are fifth. There's 6 points in between.
Sorry.
That means there's a couple other teams in there. I'm not even going to try to do the math. That's how bad my subtraction skills are.
We don't have time to look, but RB Leipzig were in second place before we started recording.
Yeah.
They may have won that game because they played the Friday game, so they could be top right now. We don't know. So just a bit of a caveat.
So I think that's what I would say is that Munich are dropping points. It's not like last season where it's this is the only team that can maybe hopefully try to stay pace.
I saw them referred to as unbeaten but unconvincing.
Yeah, there we go.
Which is interesting, right? And of course, Christian Pulisic. Julian Green's not going to start, right? But for Bayern, but Christian Pulisic
never say never.
Could start for Dortmund because he has been. And if he starts on the left, he's up against Philipp Lahm.
Yikes.
That's a matchup I would love to see.
Yikes on bikes.
Yikes on bikes. Do we think Pulisic will start? Because he's just come back from a really tough international break where he's played against Mexico, played against Costa Rica. Then Costa Rica was Tuesday. He's back to play against Bayern on Saturday. Is that a lot to ask of an 18-year-old?
Yeah, it obviously is. But there's been a lot asked of him so far, and I think he's a player who can handle it. I also think, I don't know, is Emre Moore still suspended?
I don't know how long it's been since that card.
Yeah, so he may be suspended, which means that the kind of lends likelihood to the idea that Pulisic then would start.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say he won't, just so I can be pleasantly surprised when he does.
And I will say, so we watched that match last year, 5-1. This year, you've got Pulisic and Dembele added to the Dortmund lineup, along with Aubameyang, maybe Mario Götze. I don't think Andrew Schürrle's back. They are more exciting attacking-wise.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely true. And Bayern have this guy, Mats Hummels, who I think Dortmund fans might be familiar with.
And Robert Lewandowski.
Yeah, him too.
I'd be so angry if I was a Dortmund fan in this game.
Yeah.
All right, the other big derby is Atletico Madrid versus Real Madrid.
Yep.
Also on Saturday, it's 2:45 p.m. Eastern on beIN Sports. This is Real Madrid top of the table, Atletico Madrid fourth. This is the last Madrid derby at the Calderon because Atletico Madrid are moving.
Yep. And it's a weird game to think about because not that long ago, it was come on, it's Real, Barcelona, and then Atletico will play. I think the joke in years past was that Real loved Atletico because Atletico always shipped 6 points to Madrid, but then took 6 points off of Barcelona.
Yeah.
That seems to have changed a little bit.
Yeah, the stat I have here is that the last 6 visits, the last 6 times Real Madrid went to the Calderon, have not won in 6 games. This is their last chance to change that before Atletico move away. It will be rocking in there.
It definitely will be. And then I think on paper, it also isn't quite the unbalanced game it might appear.
Yeah, so Atletico, as far as I know, don't have any injury worries. I know Griezmann's good to go from what I've read, so that's a big bonus. Real Madrid are missing Pepe, they're missing Casemiro, they're missing Toni Kroos, they're missing Morata. Ramos is back in the squad, but he's been out with an injury. And I think Karim Benzema is back after being out with an injury.
Yeah.
That's a rough injury list.
I mean,
you've still got Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale.
Yes. Yes. I mean, there is that. There's still... They still have some names in there, I'm pretty sure.
But without Casemiro, without Toni Kroos, obviously Luka Modric is in midfield for Real Madrid. It gets a little tough after that because that's a lot of your first choice midfielders.
I mean, and then as you mentioned, Sergio Ramos is back, but you don't have Pepe, so it's questionable. Do you go Varane and Sergio Ramos? Do you throw somebody else in there to deputize?
Yeah, Nacho has been deputized in. Honestly, I don't know much about Nacho, but I know that if I'm Ramos and I'm back from injury and then Antoine Griezmann's running at me, I might be thinking, I hope I'm fit.
And you forgot to mention Keylor Navas, obviously exhausted from standing still in the Costa Rica goal on Tuesday. So I don't know how he's going to deal with that. I mean, it might be that it's been so long since he's seen a shot on target that he's just going to be totally startled when Atletico fire one into the goal. You never know.
I'm laughing because
You're laughing because it hurts.
Otherwise, I have to cry.
Yep.
Yeah. Those are the three big games that we see on Saturday. There's also the big derby in Milan, which you can catch on beIN Sports this weekend. There's an Istanbul derby.
Yep.
Am I correct? Which one is it?
It is Fenerbahce Galatasaray.
All right.
I couldn't remember the nickname. They all have different nicknames because there's a third Istanbul team in there that qualifies in the form of Beşiktaş.
Beşiktaş, yeah, but that's the big one, right?
Yep.
Not to offend any Beşiktaş fans,
I mean,
but the one that gets attention is Fenerbahce.
Historically, yes, but Beşiktaş might be top of the table right now. It's either Beşiktaş or Fener, I think. So who knows for sure?
So there you go. Big
Anyone
weekend.
who's following the Turkish league would know for sure. Is the answer to that.
Big weekend of soccer coming up. We'll be back after the weekend to let you know all the big stuff
Sounds
that
good.
happened. Final thing on today's show, Taylor. Total Soccer Show Scouting Network reports. We have just the two today, but it's two young Americans.
It sure is. Up first, we have Russell Finley scouting Eric Palmer Brown, the still teenager who from Sporting KC, now on loan to FC Porto.
Well, he's down to Porto B, but
There
yeah.
we go. And Russell, I've edited this one a little bit, but Russell had me terrified for the entire first 80% of this email because he began with I have very bad news to report on Eric Palmer Brown. Ready?
Yeah.
Eric has started 5 straight matches for Porto B. He started 10 last season for the team, who won the Portuguese second division. He did miss the first 2 months of the season after breaking his fifth metatarsal, so he broke a bone in his toe or in his foot, but now seems back to fitness. Earlier this week, he scored his first professional goal against the Leicester City U23s. This upsets Russell because he's certain that it means Klinsmann's going to call him in, play him out of position, get frustrated when he doesn't handle being played out of position, and then never call him again. That was the downside that Russell was leaning towards.
So the downside was a joke.
Yes.
All right. Eric Palmer Brown
on
the path to greatness still.
You got it.
All right. Speaking of.
Yep.
Juan Carlos
Speaking
Salas,
of the path to greatness.
Yeah, Juan Carlos Salas is scouting Mallory Pugh, who obviously everybody remembers from the Olympics for US Women's National Team this year. She's with the U20s right now. The U20s are playing the World Cup in Papua New Guinea, I believe. Okay, Juan Carlos Salas says...
the tradition of Joe not reading the scouting report.
Juan Carlos Salas says, the US Under-20s are currently in the middle of the group stages of the U20 World Cup in Papua New Guinea. And things are going pretty well. They drew their first match 0-0 against France, then defeated New Zealand in their second game 3-1. More importantly, Mallory Pugh captained the team in both games, scored a beauty against New Zealand. You showed me this goal earlier. Yes. She drove at the defender, agree, cut inside, she did, and unleashed a screamer from 20 yards out. She certainly did. The US is now top of the group with 4 points, 1 match remaining against Ghana. Oh, Ghana, how our enemies.
But, finish it.
Who are currently bottom
there you go.
with just the 1 point.
Yeah. So, yes. So it looks good.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
The U20s team, I know, features Ashley Sanchez, also in the TSS Scout Network, and Katie Cousins, who I know is a former Richmond Kickers player. I think she's playing college soccer now. So if you want to look to the future after the disappointing Olympics, US U20s is where it's at.
There we go.
If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network and have a young player to scout, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. If you go $5 a month or more, you get a player to scout. If you go $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer a question of yours on a Total Soccer Show. That's what this is called.
Yep, you got it.
Once again, that is totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. Coming towards the end here, Taylor, all remains to say is thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll be back again after the weekend with a review of all the action and a look ahead to the MLS Conference Final. You gotta slice it.